why were the vaccines created if we knew that it wasn't going to be effective? Because on top of that, what they did was um, they signed a emergency use authorization, right? EUA. And correct me if I'm wrong. When you sign in an EUA, then any other drug at that time that could potentially be effective, like an ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, or anything else, then can no longer be prescribed or used for treatment, right? Because now we have a UEA order, which means we need to follow NIH, CDC, whoever's government protocol. Is that how UA works?
The emergency use
Or EUA? Yeah.
authorization, well, the emergency use authorization regulation is loosely written. It was used about a dozen times before COVID, largely for military. It was never used for a public campaign. And it's not something that people follow as a hard and fast law. For instance, it says, sure, it can be no other alternatives. But when the vaccines were introduced December 10th, 2020, we already had the Lillyprog bamlanivimab, which was an IV monoclonal. It worked really well, by the
Hmm.
way. I used a ton of it. So we already had monoclonals there. So the EUA was not the linchpin here. It was this desire to mass vaccinate the world. And Anthony Fauci presented with Rick Bright. Rick Bright was heading BARDA. BARDA is one of the organizations that, along with DARPA, are the two government organizations that were in the pandemic response business. Rick Bright came in under Obama. He was, maintained under Trump. And they presented in 2019 this concept of, a virus could come out of China. This is like a theoretical thing.
Yep.
And if we can get the sequence of the virus fast enough, we can actually pre-vaccinate United States so no one gets sick in the United States. And Fauci and Bright put this out there. It's recorded as a vision of this kind of pre-vaccination to stop pandemics. And in preparing for this interview, I went over that with John Leake, my co-author. I said, John, that's exactly what DARPA put in writing. It's still on their website in 2012. So in 2012, DARPA, which is the biological research unit of the military, had a program. They announced a research program. It's called the ADEPT P3 program. Still on their website today. It says this is 2012. They said, we will stop pandemics in 60 days using messenger RNA technology.
Was mRNA around back then?
Sure.
Of course it
2012?
was.
Messenger RNA, there's a paper in British Medical Journal by Lalani and colleagues. Messenger RNA has been around and under research with billions of government and industry dollars pumped into it since 1985.
Mm.
What is the difference between the mRNA and a traditional vaccine? Because when these vaccines were pushed on society, we noticed that Johnson and Johnson was the only one that was a traditional type of vaccine where they took the dead virus and they did whatever they did chemically to it and injected it into somebody, and it was a one and done. Whereas these mRNA vaccines, we're talking about the Pfizer's, the Modernas, and all these other pharmaceutical companies, they created this artificial vaccine.
Okay, just to clarify, to level set where we are on this. So there were an array of vaccines that came out. The SARS-CoV-2 virus, the virus for COVID, was isolated. It's a real virus. It was isolated. It was cultured. It was brought up in large quantities, and it was killed as a traditional vaccine. That's the Sinovac corona vaccine that was used in China. It was also used in South America. So that's a traditional killed vaccine. Part of the virus, a protein on the surface of the virus called the spike protein. The spike protein was uh, cloned, sequenced, and mass produced as its own protein. That's an antigen-based vaccine. And that was brought forward by Novavax, still on the market today, an antigen, no genetics in it. That would be like, let's say, a tetanus shot
Mm-hmm.
or a pneumococcal shot or hepatitis B shot. It's just an antigen-based vaccine. The genetic vaccines were something different. The genetic vaccines were AstraZeneca and Janssen, which is Johnson and Johnson, made, by the way, the companies don't make their own vaccines. They use military subcontractors. It was made by Emergent Biosolutions outside of Baltimore that made both AstraZeneca and Janssen. It makes you wonder if they're the same vaccine or not. And that was an adenoviral vector vaccine. So they take an adenovirus, a virus that's commonly can infect people, and they load the gene into it for the spike protein. And then it's put into your body. That adenovirus infects your cells, dumps the payload into the nucleus, and the nucleus produces the spike protein after J&J and after AstraZeneca. And then the final, in a sense, crown prince of vaccines now is messenger RNA vaccine. So that's not using any DNA at all, not using any antigens at all, but taking the RNA code for the spike protein and then loading it into the human body and then letting the human body read that code directly on ribosomes and cells and produce massive quantities of spike protein. And this was the gamble. The gamble is that somehow the body will dispose of this messenger RNA. And messenger RNA, listen, your body right now, your body's made tons of messenger RNA. You've made proteins. We're thinking together. We're talking. Your body is dissolving the messenger RNA. Messenger RNA lasts a few minutes to a few hours. It's a normal product. And when the messenger RNA coding for any protein was tested by Pfizer, Moderna, CureVac, Sanofi, all the companies, they realized if they just made RNA in a test tube and injected it into, your body would break it down. That's what would happen. So any protein that was desired, not much of it's going to be made because the body would break it down. And then there was a discovery called pseudouridination, replacing each uracil, which is one of the 4 base pairs, with a synthetic nucleoside analog called pseudouridine. So they replaced 25% of them, and it didn't really make it last much longer. Then they replaced 50% of it. It really didn't make much longer. Then Pfizer Moderna strategically said, you know what? Replace all of them with pseudouridine, fully pseudouridinated, make it synthetic essentially. And then when they did that, enzymes couldn't break it down. Now, the process of pseudouridination won the Nobel Prize a couple years ago by Carrico and Wiseman. It was thought to be such a brilliant intervention to make essentially what would have been a humanized messenger RNA and make it synthetic and long-lasting. The miscalculation was, well, great, now that you've made synthetic messenger RNA, how are we going to get rid of it out of the body? And even Carrico and Wiseman said, well, we don't know about that part now. So we're going to inject this into human beings. And the gamble is we don't know how long it's going to be there. We don't know where it's going to go in the body. We have no idea what's going to shut it off. And the protein that we've picked to produce with Pfizer Moderna is the lethal spike protein that was engineered in the Chinese biosecurity lab in Wuhan, China.
If you enjoyed this short clip, go ahead and click here to watch the full episode. And make sure to click here to subscribe to our channel to watch all other episodes of the WiseNuts podcast.